early American literature, its importance, purpose, and its relevance today. Why is history so important in the first place? Some may claim that there isn't any use in learning about our history. To many, history cannot be applied in our world today. This is entirely incorrect. History plays a major role in how we perceive the world around us and makes us both politically and socially aware. Not only that, but history keeps us from repeating past mistakes. So we know that early American literature is an important piece of history, but how was it used in the past? In the past, literature was used for two things: entertainment and education. It gave insight to the lives of others as well as educating people about important subjects during the time. It guided the first citizens of America through a very scary, uncertain time, filling them with hope for the future and helping them function in day-to-day life. However, education and entertainment were not the only uses for literature in early America. Literature also had a major political and social impact. It helped create many opportunities for every type of American as time went on. Literature caused more people to support the colonists as they battled for America in the 1700s. It helped in the abolishment of slavery, as African American citizens wrote about their experiences. It pushed for women's rights in a time where that concept seemed completely outlandish. The Revolutionary War, alternatively called the American Revolution, was a war in which American colonists fought for independence from Britain. Not every American colonist wanted independence from Britain, however. There were influential writers on both sides of this war. One of the most famous, and arguably most important, works of the time was Common Sense, written by Thomas Paine. In this work, Paine questions the ideologies the British held. He challenged the way the British government worked, discussing the flaws within the monarchy and how America would benefit from becoming an independent nation. Paine was one of the first to openly express the idea of America becoming a separate nation. How literature pushed for women's rights. After colonists won the Revolutionary War, the Founding Fathers began building our government. The Constitution was written and different fundamental laws were being put in place. One of the biggest things focused on within the Constitution was its promise of freedom. The only problem was that this freedom only applied to men. To women in the 18th century, this was a blaring issue. Many women stood up for their rights, proving that women could do more than men gave them credit for. Writing was not seen as a woman's work. In fact, many women were not taught to write, instead only knowing spoken English. This is why Anne Bradstreet's The 10th Muse lately sprung up in America is so important. She was the first published female author in America. How literature influenced the abolishment of slavery. Slavery was commonplace in the 18th century, most of the enslaved being African Americans. Many slaves were brought to America from West Africa, sold into the slave trade by rich West Africans and half-European princes. Slavery was legal in America from the 1600s to the late 1800s. Many early African American writers had taught themselves how to write. Black men and women that knew how to read and write were extremely rare, and most that knew how to had freed themselves. Most lived in the northern states where slavery was prohibited. Alura Dutton was one of the first African American authors. He wrote an autobiography titled The Interesting Narrative of the Life of Alura Dutton. This work was widely read and pushed the belief that black men and women were intelligent, equally as capable people. In conclusion, early American literature was and still is influential to our lives. Literature covered today shows why it's so important to not only take note of our past, but also keep documenting and growing as time goes on. One day, in the distant future, people will read literature that's being written right now. They will learn about all the different trials and tribulations of our generation as well as the generations before us. Life would not be the same without the beautiful writings of those long gone, and the history that has been documented from their past. Thank you for listening to my presentation.